our next talk, the author is Julian Cunningham and Michael W. Caldwell. The title is Phylogenetic Analysis of a New Late Cretaceous Mosasaur from the Phosphates of Morocco, with analysis of the problematic taxa M. bougii. Probably has a laser. Yeah. All right, there you are.
Okay, so yeah, I'm doing my presentation on the phylogeny of this new mosasaur called the Saga mosasaur. It's just kind of its nickname right now, as well as reanalyzing some issues with the similar taxa Mosasaurus bougii. So, just to introduce the Saga mosasaur itself, it is currently housed in the Saga Prefectural Museum in Japan, which is where it got its nickname from. I realized I should take this off so you could hear me a little bit better. It does not quite have a species name at the moment, but it originated from the phosphate deposits of Morocco and currently is under study for determining its name and phylogeny. So, just a little introduction to the mosasaurs of the Moroccan phosphates. There is a very, very high diversity. These are late Cretaceous mosasaurs, so kind of in that radiation point where we're getting lots and lots of diversity due to resource partitioning and niche partitioning. We get a lot of different types of teeth that we can actually sort into tooth guilds. So pretty much anything from crushing teeth to slicing teeth. And these specimens are found pretty much throughout Tethys Sea deposits, so have been found not only in Morocco, but also in places like North America and Europe, where the Tethys would have also invaded in the late Cretaceous, meaning that something that is unique to the Moroccan phosphates may not be unique if compared to some of these other areas. So that brings us to Mosasaurus bougii. Kind of in order to determine what the Saga mosasaur is, first we kind of had to take a step back and decide what it isn't. So Mosasaurus bougii, it was first described in 1952 based off of these 7 teeth. They are wildly variable, all disarticulated, were actually taken from 2 separate basins in Morocco. And they were described by Arenberg, who also described Platycarpus tychodon, another mosasaur based off of isolated teeth that suffered some similar problems to bougii and was actually recently redescribed. So speaking of redescription, bougii did actually go through some redescription by Bardet et al. In 2004 using these 3 new specimens, but as you can kind of see just by looking at them, they're not in the best of shape, especially the first one here. They have a lot of compression, distortion, and especially a lot of breakage and disarticulation of the skull bones, which leads to a fair bit of ambiguity. So just to kind of start off, I started basically just by going through the teeth of Mosasaurus bougii to kind of determine if the ones from Arenberg's first diagnosis were from the same species as the ones that Bardet et al. Proposed. And so after I basically narrowed down bougii into the cut tooth gild, I plotted the maximum length and maximum width of each of the teeth against several other cut tooth gild mosasaurs, those being Gavialomymus, which was actually the redescription of Platycarpus tychodon, as well as Eremiosaurus heterodontus and Mosasaurus hoffmanni. So I ended up also plotting single factor ANOVA tests on these teeth. So for graph A, it was essentially no significant difference in the overall variability between the four species. Within the species, Mosasaurus bogiae in B and Eremiosaurus heterodontus in C did show significant variability in the tooth size and shape within the species, but Mosasaurus hoffmanni did not. And so basically through this analysis, it just told me that there isn't necessarily enough evidence to show that the isolated teeth from Arenberg weren't the same species from Bardet et al. But if those teeth were taken together as all being from Mosasaurus bogiae, there would have to be a level of tooth variability between the individuals, most similar to E. heterodontus, which was known and named for its tooth variability. So one more quick little thing I did on Mosasaurus bogiae, which was not quick at all, was the analysis of the crania. So Bardet et al. Also proposed 3 new cranial features that could be diagnostic, all of which are not without their own problems. Firstly, there was a concavity to the palatine, which you can kind of see there, was proposed as one of these features, but again, it does appear relatively exaggerated due to the taphonomic breakage on the posterior of this specimen. Next, there was the lateral visibility of the splenial, which it was, the diagnostic feature was basically stated it was very, very visible on the lateral surface, I suppose, of the dentary. But again, the only specimen this actually appears in is a specimen where this bone is very disarticulated from its original position. And finally, there was the presence of a second, more dorsal notch on the wing of the coronoid. Not only was the shape of this notch misinterpreted in the reconstruction, however, it does appear to interrupt the grain on the coronoid wing surface. So an idea that was actually suggested by Takuya Konishi, who helped me out greatly in this project, was that this notch could be evidence of a bite from another mosasaur. But it is currently a bit outside of the study to tell for sure whether this is natural or was taphonomic or caused by another mosasaur. So if these aren't Mosasaurus bogiae, what are they? And are they potentially the same species as the Saga mosasaur? So to figure this out, I charted out basically all of the cranial bones used to describe Mosasaurus bogiae by Bardet et al., compared them to descriptions of Mosasaurus hoffmanni, Eremiosaurus heterodontus, as well as the eventual character matrix I assembled for the Saga mosasaur. And essentially the result was that morphological similarities place these closest to Mosasaurus hoffmanni, whereas the tooth material places it closer to Eremiosaurus. But the important thing was that in comparison, there did not appear to be nearly enough similarities, aside from maybe the size and tooth guild, between these specimens and the Saga mosasaur, and therefore the Saga mosasaur was considered a species different from Mosasaurus bogiae. So, in order to conduct these comparisons and the phylogenetic analysis, the first step here was to interpret and put together a reconstruction of the skull of the Saga mosasaur, which I have done here, and probably took the most amount of time, and I have the least amount of stuff to say about it. So From there, I used a feature matrix that was adapted from Strong et al. 2020's re-diagnosis of Gabialomymus to produce several trees. The two I will be talking about are, first of all, the consensus trees, which it does feature a few polytomies, particularly within Mosasaurinae and Plioplatycarpinae. And the Saga mosasaur you can see there. The second tree that I completed here was the bootstrap tree, also presented with Bremer values. And these did appear to resolve some of these polytomies, but there was a little bit lower confidence in these resolutions. So while the Saga mosasaur, which is there, did have pretty consistent placement, there were some questions about the actual outgroups for the Saga mosasaur. So just in broad consistency with a few other recent mosasaur phylogenies, essentially Tethysaurininae, Halosaurinae, Tylosaurinae, and Yagurasaurinae. The species within, as well as the groups, were consistent throughout my trees, and several other recently proposed trees. It was mostly the species within Mosasaurinae and the Plioplatycarpinae that had some of those issues. So just to quickly discuss here, because I'm running a little bit short on time, for the crown group Mosasaur, the crown group of Mosasaurinae, we can chop it up into two groups, one that has that higher uncertainty due to the polytomy and the lower Bremer support, and one that remained consistent throughout pretty much all of the trees produced. And fortunately for us, the Saga mosasaur does exist in these very consistent, in this very consistent clade. However, when I was determining the outgroup, I did also not just reference this, but also reference trees by Samos et al. In 2017, Strong et al. In 2020, just to gain a bit higher accuracy. So in conclusion, basically, we can say with certainty that the Saga mosasaur exists on the base of the clade, including everything from Plasiotylosaurus all the way to Mosasaurus hoffmanni, Mosasaurus missouriensis, with the outgroup containing all the species under the genus Prognathodon. So what is next? Basically, now that we know the general placement of the Saga mosasaur, and we have determined that it is not Mosasaurus boschii, if it is found to be its own species, it can be described and named, as well as be used for furthering insights on paleoecology of these Moroccan mosasaurs, including resolution of problematic taxa like the Mosasaurus boschii. So huge acknowledgements to Mike Caldwell, Takuya Kanishi, Alessandro Palsi, Hallie Street, and Robin Hildebrand, who helped out immensely, and my crazy literature cited. And are there any questions? Yep. The age of the Saga mosasaur, because it was recovered from the fossil trade, is not known precisely. We do know it is Maastrichtian based off of its basically the substrate it was found in. We are able to link it back to a few potential spots in the Moroccan phosphates. We just don't know for sure. I think we have it narrowed down to two basins, or two layers in one basin, because we know for sure it is from the Oleg Abdown Basin in Morocco. So that's pretty much as close as we've got so far.
All right, that's all the time we have for questions. Thank you very much. All right, our next talk